Okay, so what do we know history-wise about the Rock Island Tool Company? Well, in 1906, the Rock Island Tool Company, and they're in Rock Island, Illinois, they reorganized, and they took over Jacobson Machine Company. And Jacobson Machine Company was from Warren, Pennsylvania. And at that time, they began manufacturing a full line of vices that following fall, but they also manufactured a lot of other tools. In 1930, there was a company called Bertman Electric. They bought out part of, or most of, the vise and tool part of this from Warren, and the labeling became Bertman Electric Company on the vices after that. And they created a Rock Island, division still in Rock Island, Illinois. It was still there. But Bertman themselves, before acquiring and making these organizational changes, they made vacuums, irons, toasters, and household electric components and products and stuff like that. And I'm not that familiar with all of that. This is just the background from research. They eventually merged with Whirlpool in 1959, and the Rock Island plant continued making vices up until 1959. It became, after 1959, it became the Production Tool Company of Warren, Michigan. And they purchased the Rock Island Vise Company at that time, and the entire inventory was moved back to Warren, Pennsylvania. So it's like a lot of switching and merging and things like that. But the good part is these are nice old vices, like I said. They're worth restoring, I think. How do I know all this? It came out of an online research out of the newspaper called The Michigan. And, the rest of it is what it is. You can watch the restoration, give you an idea, the moving parts and stuff. It's not that difficult to figure out. You should consider doing it if you ever run across one of these. I've saved multiple old vices from the junkyard. I don't think they're that difficult to restore. It's just they're time-consuming and laborious, yes. But, and you have to buy jaws, maybe. I mean, you might have to do some grinding, whatever. It's all, elbow grease work, really. Okay, good morning. Here we go. We stopped at my brother's house. We sat around shooting the breeze for a little bit. He had thrown out in his driveway this old vise. We said, well, it doesn't work anymore anyway. Didn't really want it. So, he went ahead and he gave it to me. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of a fun video. We'll do a little bit of a restoration project, and we'll talk about, the way I do it. And this is probably about the 4th or 5th vise I've restored from something that was either scrap or junk. So it seems like I'm got a collection of vices going on. So, all right, anyway, first thing I'm going to do, taking a look at this. Look right here. Let's look real close. Okay, I'm going to move it around a little bit. These got these bolts and this plywood on here. And, well, we need to get it removed. Let me show you. All right. So there it is. So it's all kind of gummed up. It's rusty. It doesn't want to turn. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these bolts off all the way around, and I'll be right back. They should come off with just a little bit of PB blaster and a wrench. So nothing really to watch for the moment. I'll be right back. Okay, let's take a look. I got that base off of there, that kind of crappy plywood, and I'm going to save these bolts. I can clean them up. They're still in good shape. I'll probably use them. I don't know yet. But let's get back to the vise. Now this thing's frozen up. I squirted some WD-40 on that. It's like a long screw. I'll flip it up and show you here. It's a nice heavy vise. It says Rock Island number 590. Looks like 593 on it. Alright, right up in here there's a collet, and it's got a screw, but it's frozen. So I'm going to try to unfreeze it by saturating it with PB Blaster. I also have a mixture of ATF and acetone. It works better than PB Blaster. I'll use that too here in a minute, and then I'm going to try to free this whole thing up so that we get some movement. Then I can take this part out. We can separate it and clean everything up, and hopefully we can get this thing working again. So give me a minute and I'll show you right here. Let me see if I can get a better close-up. Okay, right there. There's a screw. That's what's frozen. If I can get that off, loosen it up, this will come out. That's the next goal here. So give me just a minute. I'm going to soak it, and then we'll try to get it off. Okay, while that's soaking, what I decided to do is I'm going to hook up I've got a small power drill. I'm going to hook up. I'll find some kind of a wire wheel put on it. I'll show you here in a minute. I'm going to try to clean up all of the exterior of this so we're not wasting time. Rather than just waiting for the PB blaster to work, we'll start to clean this up and we'll see what we got. So give me a minute and I'll show you my setup. Okay, you're going to see I got the WD-40. I have my rigid hand drill here. It's got a wire wheel on it. There's the PB blaster. I've got it soaking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to try to clean this up the best I can with that wire wheel. I'm not going to run the video. It's kind of boring to watch me sit there with a wire wheel going over it, but that's simply all I'm going to use on this right now, just to clean it up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I let that soak for a while, and what I did is it did loosen up that little set screw. Once that set screw was open, and I also shot that PB blaster mixture, that ATF, that acetone, all down that worm screw all the way, and then I started to spin this like I was loosening it up. It started to move. I had to tap it with a hammer, wiggle it, play around. Eventually it started to go ahead and spin more freely. So you have to loosen this up. Start spinning this, and then pretty soon what'll happen is this. Okay, what'll happen is as you're spinning this, I had to keep playing around with it in the back, because with that set screw loosened, I'm spinning this like I'm opening it, and eventually after squirting that ATF stuff back in here, this is like a little threaded anvil looking thing that helps secure it, it slides out. There it is. Now the next thing you want to do is take this thing apart. Now after all the years of corrosion back here, I used a wire wheel, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit better, and I put a little bit of that PB blaster right on this part of the anvil, the flat part. See if I can just slide it off. So give me just a sec and we'll take a look. Alright, that's as far as it's going to go right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a big punch. I'll show you here in a minute, and we'll see if we can just wedge that all the way out, and then we can clean it up better. So just a sec. I laid it on the bench and I took this ball peen hammer, and I kept hitting it here, and I kept hitting it here and here, and it took a little while, and I kept putting PB blaster onto this and everywhere I could, and it slowly started to give, and you could see as it started to come out like more and more and more. Eventually I got it totally out. So now it's totally off. Now the next step, I'm going to clean all this up with a wire brush. Then I'll restart the video and I'll show you what we're going to do to restore this. Maybe we can get this working perfectly fine again. I still haven't looked at the worm drive. We'll look at that in a little bit. That's what I call it. It's a big long threaded shaft. But we'll take a look at that in a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, let's talk about where we're at for a minute. What I did is I disassembled this totally into pieces now. And what I did is I used that acetone ATF mixture I was telling you about. I put a little more acetone in it. It's usually a 50-50 mixture, but sometimes I put a little bit more acetone in it. I took it all apart. I soaked this piece. I wire brushed it down on that wire wheel, and I got it incredibly clean back to the cast. Now I still got to go in here and clean up these inside of these threads, because somebody put a ton of grease in it. Some of it's hardened over time. But I'll figure out some kind of a brush, a stiff brush, to get in there and twirl it around. But I'm going to soak this now, right here. I'm just going to soak it like that in that same mixture. You just get a small Tupperware container, set it in there, soak it. It will loosen up all that crud the best that it can. And I've already reached in there and kind of twirled around with a real fine screwdriver and played around trying to dig out as much as I could. But this will soak and loosen up all the rest of it, and it should be able to come out easier with a stiff brush. Probably look at the dollar store. I'll see what I come up with and I'll show you later. This right here, I got it clean. I stripped all the paint off of it. It was red, and then there was yellow, and even under the yellow there was some rust. And I'm beginning to think, because if I look at this on the inside, way back in here, you'll see the yellow, and then there's nothing else below it. So I think originally it was yellow in color. But it's called Rock Island. The number now is 593. So we'll look up later and see what it's got to say. These jaws are in good shape. The other ones are flat. I'll show you a little bit later how I can use an angle grinder, because it's still good thick steel. This one over here, I can't get these off. They won't budge. So I've been squirting. There's a little groove in here where the jaw is actually set into before you screw them in. I keep squirting that stuff in there, either PB Blaster or whatever you happen to have. Like I said, I use that ATF mixture I keep talking about. It seems to work really good. I've still got some cleanup to do here and here. I'm going to soak this stuff and then I'll get back with you as soon as I get this stuff soaked. And the same thing down here. Same thing right here. Here's that worm screw. Goes all the way up. I've still got to get that out and then we'll clean that up. That'll be easy. I can go over to a bench grinder, use a wire wheel, clean it up rapidly. Then we can start putting this thing back together and deciding what we'll do from there. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to shut the video off. Let's let this stuff soak. Let me get things apart. It's still not wanting to come out of here, and like I said, we got to do something about both the threads here and here, the male and the female. Okay, I'll be back with you in just a bit and I'll keep explaining. Okay, so what happened is I was able to get those screws out by taking a hammer and chiseling them around. Alright, so after that, I removed these screws, and you can see they're countersunk here. So what I did next is I cleaned this with PB Blaster, and I wire brushed it, and I got all this nice and clean. And then I turned around, I went down in these holes with the PB Blaster, and I blew it out with an air gun real hard. So this will be ready to go back in there now. You can kind of set it up on there. Just like that, and line up the screw holes. And what I did is I went down to the hardware store and I got these new screws, the same size. They'll go right back in here. So we're going to go ahead and try to put those back in here. Just like that. The screwdriver. So far in the project, not even $1 for these screws. They're about 40 cents each. Put it back in. Okay, there you have it. Those jaws now are back to the way they should be, setting in there. Now the only thing about this is it's fairly smooth here. Somebody smoothed this out with like an angle grinder or something. I don't know why. Now if you wanted to, you could take a cutoff wheel and I could take these screws back out and you could make crisscross patterns like this across it, then come back the other way across it, and then that would give you teeth again. But I'm going to see how this all goes back together before we decide to do that. So give me a moment, I'll set it back up on the workbench and we'll go from there. Okay, you can see now I've got it propped up. There's the worm drive, that's what I call it, but it's that long threaded shaft. And it's all gummed up full of stuff. It's got rust right through here, and it's just a total mess. So what we need to do next, I'm going to take it over to my wire wheel in the garage on a grinder, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that wire wheel and I'm going to clean this thing up real clean. Then this piece right here is the back end that it threads into, and I'll show you that when we reassemble it. I'm going to go in there with just a brush and I'm going to clean those threads out right here. And it goes right out the other side. And it cleaned that. I don't know how well you can see that. It cleaned that out really good. It's all nice and shiny again. And the wire brush did it. Now you could do this a couple of times. It's not going to hurt anything. Or 3 times, 4 times, whatever you want. And these are the inexpensive brushes from out of Harbor Freight. This is all I do. And both sides of this look incredibly good. Okay, we got them good and clean. Okay, next step is let's clean this up and I'll be back with you in a few minutes.